Welcome into Texans today, everybody. I'm your host, Jeremy Chuggs, and we're going to be breaking down some of the latest trade rumors circulating around your Houston Texans, and I'm going to break down the possibility that Nick Caserio makes a move on the trade market. And just remember, if anything goes down with your Houston Texans, if any trade happens, you know where to go. We'll be breaking it down right here. Make sure you hit that subscribe button for free Texans videos all year long. It costs you nothing to watch this channel. Make sure you hit that sub button, turn on your notifications so you never miss a moment of Texans football. If something happens, we break it down right here on the channel for you. And I was scrolling through, Twitter timeline, seeing all the stuff going on, and I came across a Bleacher Report article that had your Houston Texans in it a ton with some trade rumors, some trade possibilities. So first up, there's three trades that we're going to talk about, three different trade scenarios. So the first one was, they said the Bears might be interested in trading for offensive guard Shaq Mason. Very interesting. Let's see what BR had to say about the Bears trading for Mason. The Bears could find themselves completely remodeling the interior of their offensive line. Teven Jenkins, Coleman, Shelton, and Matt Pryor are all set to be free agents. There's something to be said for adding a veteran to the mix there. And Shaq Mason could be available for cheap based on the Texans' struggles on the offensive line this season. Mason could become a bit of a scapegoat, but he could also help the Bears right the ship. A little bit of a scapegoat. 8 sacks allowed this year, but we're scapegoating him. It's okay. I no shade towards Shaq Mason, but I think he would even argue himself that this was the worst year of his career so far. And maybe it is an anomaly. Maybe it is just a one-year funk for Shaq Mason. Or maybe it's him starting to decline as he's getting a little up there in age. The PFF numbers for him last season, not that pretty. 62.3 overall grade, 65.2 pass blocking, and a 57.7 run blocking grade. And he is one snap shy of 1,000 snaps this past season for the Houston Texans. So I would be okay with the Texans trading away an offensive lineman, but I think it comes down to this, where would you rather trade an older veteran in Shaq Mason, or maybe trade Kenyon Green, who was a former first rounder, a bust, some might say? Let me know your thoughts down below in the comment section. Which one would you trade? If you had to trade one of these guys away, would you go Shaq Mason type SM, or would you go Kenyon Green type KG down in the comment section? If you get hit with the YouTube ad break, hey, it's all good. Scroll on down and give me your answer of who you would trade away. I would probably lean towards Shaq Mason. At least with Kenyon Green, you're hoping that maybe he rights the ship, gets it together. With Shaq Mason, I think it's, just a matter of time before the wheels start falling off on this. And like I said, Shaq Mason, his first couple of years in Houston, I thought was a very respectable guard in this league. But Father Time catches up to everybody. And I think it might be catching up to Mason as he gets up there in age. This past season, he just looked a step behind. Every single game I saw, it looked like he knows what he needs to do, but his body it's just not performing at that level anymore. So for that reason, I think you move on from Mason, maybe clear up a little bit of cap space. I know the numbers are a little wonky there. I was trying to go through Spotrac myself. I think they would have to do it a post-June 1st trade to save any sort of money on Shaq Mason. But that's kind of what I'm leaning right now. I'll talk about Kenyon Green, though, in just a moment. And BR actually had an idea about trading Kenyon Green. I'll break that down in just 1 second. But got to show some love to our sponsors over at GameTime, my go-to ticketing app. And hey, if you're not using it to find the best last-minute tickets, the lowest prices guaranteed on sporting events, concerts, comedy shows, anything in your area, well, hey, you're just doing it wrong. And hey, the big game is right here. It's this week in New Orleans. And whether you're trying to sit at the 50-yard line or get those nosebleed seats, GameTime has you covered. They got deals on tickets right up to the start of the event, and even an hour after it starts, it's the best place to find those last-minute seats. And hey, Maybe you're not trying to go to New Orleans. Maybe you're just trying to stay in the H and go to a Rockets game. Trade deadline, it's upon us. The Rockets are one of the best teams in the West, and if you're trying to go see the Houston Rockets this season, well, go check them out on GameTime. They've got all the best deals on every single game you're trying to go to, and they have a new feature actually called the GameTime Picks. This basically allows you to filter out all the fluff and shows you the best bang for your buck, the very best deals on the app, so you don't have to search through thousands of tickets and compare prices. It shows you the very best deals on whatever event you're trying to go to. So go ahead and download the GameTime app, create an account, and use code ChatSports for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code CHATSPORTS for $20 off your first purchase. Download GameTime today. What time is it? It's game time. Now, I mentioned Kenyon Green was also in this article. He was in a trade idea, but to the Dallas Cowboys for a first-round bust of their own, Mazi Smith. To put it lightly, Kenyon Green this past year, I had really high hopes going into the season. He missed his sophomore year due to injury. He got injured in the preseason, missed his entire second year, came back this third year, was supposedly in the best shape of his life, and the PFF grades do not reflect that. 561 snaps, an overall grade of 39.4, pass blocking of 40.9, and a run blocking grade of 45.2. He was not good. He ended up getting injured in that Thursday night game up against the Jets on Halloween. We did not see him for the rest of the season. And I think that might be maybe because of the injury, but also maybe because the Texans had seen all they needed to see from Kenyon Green to know he's not the answer at left guard. But talk about the flip side. Maybe the Dallas Cowboys, they have some problems of their own drafting defensive linemen, and Mazi Smith, their latest first-round bust that they've kind of gone through. Out of Michigan, they drafted him in the first round to be that run-stuffing defensive tackle, maybe get some pressure up the middle, and he really hasn't delivered on any of that for Dallas so far. I mean, last year, 41 tackles, 1 sack, 4 tackles for loss. That showed glimpses last year, but still isn't the answer for your starting defensive tackle. You're not feeling comfortable if he's your go-to guy at DT for starting next year. Now, the Texans, they don't necessarily have that problem because their defensive line is somewhat stacked. So adding Mazi Smith could be a decent rotation piece as he's kind of ingratiated with all these other really good defensive linemen that the Texans have. Now, I don't know if the Cowboys go for the bait of Kenyon Green to add to their interior offensive line depth because I don't think he's a starter even for Dallas if they trade for him. But maybe both these teams are like, hey, we don't really want our guy. You don't really want your guy. Maybe both these guys need a fresh start, need a new time. So they they basically put out, why not just a player-for-player swap? You rarely see it in the NFL where it's just player-for-player. But they said Mazi Smith for Kenyon Green straight up. Let me know. Would you do this trade? Give me a yes. Give me a no down in the comments section. Would you make this trade? I mean, sure. Yeah, I would. Both guys have been really underwhelming, so I wouldn't mind making a switch. I'm actually with producer Justin right now, who is a Cowboys fan, and he said, no, thank you. So I don't know if the Cowboys do this trade. I don't know if they really want a bust interior offensive lineman where they actually have a lot of young guys on their offensive line already that kind of need to prove themselves. Tyler Guyton. But, yeah, I mean, if they're willing to give up Mazi Smith and give us a rotational DT and we can get Kenyon Green off the books, yeah, sure. Sign me up. And the last trade is the Texans with some trade targets. They said there's 3 trade targets for the Houston Texans, Mazi Smith, and then they also mentioned Trey Pipkins III and then Evan Neal as possible options for the Houston Texans. First, let's talk about Trey Pipkins III from Los Angeles, played for the Chargers this past year, 15 games played, 6 sacks allowed, is a very meh player, very meh. He's a solid, like, if I'm saying in Madden, he's like a 73, 74 overall. He's okay. Like, if you need somebody in a pinch to start, I wouldn't love starting Trey Pipkins, but I mean, if the Chargers are willing to give him up for the cheap, maybe a 6th or 7th round pick, I mean, okay. The Texans don't have a 6th round pick this year, but maybe a 6th round pick in 2026. I don't know what the Chargers would be willing to give up for Trey Pipkins III. So that one I'm like, okay. The next one is a little bit more interesting. Evan Neal, the former first-round pick, another draft bust, was a top 10 pick for the Giants. 9 games played, 2 sacks allowed. They've tried him at both tackle spots. Hasn't really worked out. And I know it's the old cliche in the NFL, especially with offensive linemen. Oh, he's not a good tackle? Well, just kick him into guard. He'll be a really good guard. I don't know if that's necessarily the path for Evan Neal. It worked for Mekhi Becton with the Eagles this past season. But another guy where I don't know what the Giants would want in terms of a trade for him. We have a Giants channel here at Chat Sports, and I asked host Marshall Green, Evan Neal, what do you want for him? Told me a bag of chips. So 6th or 7th round pick, I guess, again, for Evan Neal. At the end of the day, though, these guys don't really move me. They don't really excite me at all for a Texans offensive line that wasn't good last year. These just seem like Band-Aids to go on a huge flesh wound. It doesn't really make sense. The Texans offensive line is their biggest weakness. They need an upgrade. I'd rather just go out and draft some offensive linemen than trade for guys who are major projects, major guys who they haven't shown you anything in the NFL, and you're banking on upside. I know it's kind of the same thing in the NFL draft, but at least you don't really have to give anything up for those guys, and you get them on a rookie deal, a rookie contract. I would much rather the Texans just focus in the draft and draft some offensive linemen, which I'll be dropping a mock draft later on in the week, and you'll kind of see where I stand on that bit. But at the end of the day, if I'm the Houston Texans, yes, some of these trades do interest me, but at the end of the day, I don't really think they need to go out and trade for an offensive lineman. I'd rather either sign somebody in free agency, create some cap space, maybe by trading somebody away, or, like I said, just go ahead and draft somebody in this year's draft.